Hi, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to this presentation on supporting children with anxiety. This is a workshop that's aimed at our parents and caregivers. Hi, I'm Sasha. I'm the school psychologist, and it's my main job to work with any young person whose mental health might be getting in the way of them attending class or submitting schoolwork or just participating fully in online school. Which is awesome. I also get to put together presentations and workshops like this where we can connect with the wider school community. I've been working with young people and families for about 8 or 9 years now, so I feel really confident speaking on this subject, and I'm really excited that we can get out to the people who support our young people the most, and that's you, the parents and the caregivers. So in this presentation, I will be breaking down what anxiety is, the main difference between experiencing anxiety and having an anxiety disorder. Also talk a little bit about how it's diagnosed and some of the small key differences between different kinds of anxiety disorders, just so we've got a good background of what you might be dealing with on a daily basis for your child with anxiety. I'm also going to break down the vicious cycle of avoidance, with anxiety's main key trick being getting them to avoid the things they don't want to do. I'll also be talking about how we treat anxiety at a professional level, but also all the amazing things that you can do to support that process and support your young person 24/7 at home. And I've also got a few resources that we know of out there that are free for yourself and for young people as an aside to therapy or if they are not accessing therapy at the moment. So that's what we'll be going through today. What is anxiety? What a great question. This is my absolute favorite video for showing adults, for showing young people when I'm first starting therapy about what anxiety is and where it comes from and why on earth we experience it. So let me share that with you.
The human mind has evolved to think in such a way that it naturally creates psychological suffering. You see, back in the Stone Age, 200,000 years ago, life was pretty dangerous for our caveman ancestors. So if a caveman or cavewoman wanted to survive, their minds had to constantly be on the lookout for things that might hurt or harm them. And if that cave person's mind wasn't good at predicting, spotting or avoiding danger, what happened to her? The default setting of the caveman mind was safety first. And we in the modern world have inherited this. Our modern minds are constantly warning us of things that might hurt or harm us. The caveman mind says, watch out, there might be a bear in that cave, you could get eaten. Watch out, that shadow on the horizon might be an enemy from another clan, you could get speared. Our modern mind then does worrying, predicting the worst, avoiding anything that scares you, anxiety in all of its different forms. Back in caveman days, you survive an encounter with a bear or a wolf, then it's useful to replay it. It's useful for your mind to go over the events and remember what you did to survive so that you're better prepared for next time. But in our modern world, we go over and over painful memories, dwelling on them, reliving them, even when there's nothing useful to learn or the lesson has been well and truly learned a long time ago. In the Stone Age era, as a caveman or cavewoman, you have to fit in with the group. If you are alone, you will soon die. So your mind compares you to others in the group. Am I fitting in? Am I contributing enough? Am I following the rules? Am I doing anything that might get me thrown out? Now, in modern life, we're always comparing ourselves to others. But the problem is we're no longer in a small group. Our groups are enormous today, and we carry with us devices that constantly feed us images and stories of people all over the planet. This constant comparison ramps up our fear of being judged or rejected or not fitting in or just not being good enough. The caveman mind tells you you need more food, you need more water, better weapons, better shelter. The cave people who thought this way lived longer and had more offspring. Unfortunately, in the modern world, this manifests as greed, dissatisfaction, craving, wanting. It's never enough. I need more, more, more. And if all of that wasn't bad enough, these Stone Age thought patterns are intensified by the sheer pace and complexity of modern life. Our frantic existence, rushing from task to task, that never-ending to-do list. So, when your mind starts doing this unhelpful stuff, as all minds do, remember it's not defective or abnormal, and it's not deliberately trying to make your life difficult. It's simply doing the job it has evolved to do, trying to keep you safe and save you from pain.
All right. I feel like I see something new in that video each time. But my favorite part of that, I think, explains social anxiety really well. That inherent drive that we have all the way back when we were cavemen, and how dangerous it was if we were kicked out of the group, which I think can be really freeing for young people, particularly with social anxiety. But as an overall, the difference between experiencing anxiety, which is a physiological response to fear and danger, that heart pounding, that not being able to focus on anything else, the tense muscles, the shaking, the sweating, all of that is a physiological response to danger. It's your body's way of trying to keep you safe, that employee of the month at the end of the video. And that is completely normal. And I say to young people, I would be quite worried if your body wasn't doing that. But when we have that response, or when we're finding that the consequences of getting anxious, avoidance, tucking yourself away, overthinking, is starting to make your life difficult and cause you a lot of suffering, that's when we might start to say somebody has an anxiety disorder. And anxiety disorders are extremely common. So, anxiety is the most common mental health condition in Australia, affecting 1 in 7 people and affecting 14% of young people in 1 year. It's also the most common condition to be paired with another disorder. So, that's what we might call comorbidity rates with other health conditions. And I think if you are experiencing depression, or if you're experiencing health conditions, or you've experienced some trauma, it is again quite normal that your brain is going to overthink and try and predict and plan and avoid that from happening again, which is anxiety, when those anxiety thinking patterns start to develop. So anxiety disorders are really common, and particularly common of the young people who access open access. I think I was told, and don't quote me on this, that something like 60% of our young people experience social anxiety, so one form of anxiety. So very, very common in our population and very common in the Australian population. I think what a lot of young people and parents don't know is there's actually more than one type of anxiety. And we categorize the anxiety disorder type based on what the young person is afraid of, and also the avoidance pattern as well. So you'll see in my next slide, avoidance, avoiding something that you're afraid of, is core to anxiety. And when we're diagnosing the specific anxiety disorder type, we're also talking about the avoidance pattern. So if we're using social anxiety as our example, which I probably will throughout this workshop, if you are socially anxious, your fear is that you will be judged, you'll be embarrassed, you'll look silly if you go into a feared situation. And the avoidance pattern is usually I'm going to avoid any risk of judgment. So that could be I'm going to avoid class completely, or I'm going to avoid handing in any work, I'm going to avoid leaving the home, I'm going to avoid interacting with friends. So there's kind of two core components to that anxiety disorder. Another anxiety disorder that I'm often speaking to young people about, and I think this is the one that most people think of when they think of anxiety, is generalized anxiety disorder. And that's kind of characterized by worrying in lots of different domains. That could be health, that could be worrying about your parents, that could be worrying about being judged, that could be worrying about what's happening in the world at the moment. There's lots of different avoidance patterns for that. Another specific anxiety disorder I'm often talking to young people about at open access is panic disorder, also agoraphobia. The difference between those two is a panic disorder is when you're afraid of having a panic attack, which often triggers a panic attack. And agoraphobia is a fear of being somewhere where you won't be able to get away or escape or get help because your body's going to go into overdrive with those panic symptoms. So for both of these, the fear is really my own body symptoms. I'm afraid of anxiety itself. And the avoidance pattern for these is either I'm going to avoid anything that triggers my anxiety, and for agoraphobia, I'm going to avoid being in a place specifically where I can't get help. And that's often outside of the house. So I hope this explains a little bit. Anxiety disorders are all similar in their flavor of avoidance and their flavor of being extremely afraid of something. But what the feared object is and what the avoidance pattern is quite different. Hopefully, your treating practitioner has done a really thorough assessment and has told you what type of anxiety disorder that they think your young person is experiencing, whether that be their GP, whether that be a psychologist. You can probably guess a little bit as well if you're sitting down and saying to your young person, what is it that you're actually afraid of? That can give you a lot of clues as well. The vicious cycle of anxiety. Now, I can almost take any young person, old person who is experiencing something feared and put it into this model. I think it's really helpful. So, when we experience anxiety, that physiological response, that fear of something, this is the cycle we're falling into. So even before we're going into a triggering situation, often we and our young people are already hypervigilant to the feared thing. They're often, I call it wearing like your anxiety glasses. You see the world almost on the back foot. So increased scanning for danger, your physical symptoms are already kind of up here and your attention really narrows to the things you're afraid of. So, for example, if we're using social anxiety as an example, a young person might be really afraid of being judged, really afraid of going to class. They're going to read every email from their teachers, hey, looking forward to seeing you today, as possibly, yeah, looking forward to seeing you today. And that's just the glasses that they're wearing. They're on the back foot, they're hyper vigilant to things going wrong. So that's often the back lens that they're working on. Then when they encounter the triggering situation, they're going to be motivated to escape or avoid it, to not do it. Now, in the short term, often we notice our young people feeling relieved. Their anxiety goes away. Oh, great, I don't have to do the thing I'm afraid of. But always, and I can say that with confidence, always there is long-term consequences for our young people about that avoidance. So, got an increase in your body symptoms when you next encounter that feared situation. We've got rumination, which means overthinking about what's happening, loss of confidence, increased use of your safety behaviors, your tricks to try and get out of being in that feared situation. So if we use our social anxiety example again, I'm already nervous, I'm worried, I'm checking my emails, I'm looking at the time, I'm really worried about class at 11 o'clock. And then I just decide I just can't. I'm hiding in my bed. I'm telling you I can't do it. I'm trying to pick a fight with my parents. I'm not going to class today at 11. In the short term, I feel better. Oh, great. I didn't have to do class. I was so anxious about it. And now I don't have to do it. But in the longer term, I would put money on that day that young person's thinking, why can't I do these things? What is wrong with me? I'm useless. Why can other young people just rock up to class and it looks easy? What is wrong with me? Now I've got emails from my teachers. They're asking where I was. They're trying to call me. They're telling me I've got all this work banked up. My body is anxious, anxious. I'm going into overdrive. I'm letting my parents down. All of that stuff catches up with them. And then that increases their anxiety. They're even more afraid to go to class the next day. We see this cycle going round and round and round. So, what do we do about it? In reversing the cycle of anxiety, we're essentially just taking the avoidance away. We're getting the young people to do the things that they don't want to do. And I know that sounds really scary. And it's a really hard sell for me, most definitely, in therapy. But when we reverse the anxious cycle, The young person's confronted with a thing that they're afraid of. We try and encourage them not to use safety behaviors. Their anxiety increases when they're doing this feared thing. That's normal. That's to be expected. They get more anxious. They're doing the feared thing, but they don't avoid, they don't escape. And what we notice over time, their anxiety starts to drop. They use the coping skills that we've hopefully taught them in therapy, that you've talked them through, to get their anxiety to a manageable level. They start to learn, yeah, I can do this. I'm good at this stuff. I am in control. I have belief in my own abilities. I can trust my body. I can trust the people around me. And then when the next situation comes around again, they know, yeah, I got a little bit anxious last time, but I did it. I can do it again this time. It really definitely picks up their confidence. So one last point on that, I guess, before I move on, one thing that I will stress later on is I'm not lying to young people about their anxiety increasing or being uncomfortable when they're doing the thing that they don't want to do. We're going to expect that. We're going to plan for it. But it doesn't mean that your anxiety is going to stay up the whole time. Eventually, it will come down. We know you can cope with that. And that will be one of the roles that you can play as a parent in helping them sit in that really, really difficult space until they can calm down a little bit. All right, how do we treat anxiety? So, as a psychologist, these are some of the ways that I am treating anxiety at open access. There are more ways than this to treat anxiety, but these are the main two I know that I'm using, and cognitive behavior therapy, the first one there, is the most evidence-based treatment that we have for anxiety. So under CBT, really generally, we're looking at how do your feelings influence your behavior, influence your thoughts, how does it go around in a bit of a cycle like we've talked about. But really core to treating anxiety with cognitive behavior therapy is to remove the avoidance behaviors, to change the behavior. We teach our young people to challenge their thoughts, to sit with uncomfortable feelings. We give them relaxation strategies for when their body starts to feel really overwhelming and go into anxiety overdrive. But really core to good CBT practice is what's called an exposure hierarchy. And I'll talk about that in the next slide. Another strategy that I'm using with young people is acceptance and commitment therapy, which has some good evidence for treating lots of different mental health disorders. When it comes to ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, that's the acronym there, it really is thinking about, okay, what is the bigger picture here? What kind of meaningful, values-driven life do I want to live? And can I push through these body feelings, these thoughts, the situation to get to what is more important in the service of following my values and living a meaningful life? Obviously, we give a lot young people a lot of strategies to cope with, sit with all of those feelings. But in its own special way, it really is not avoiding the things that we don't want to do anymore as well. So this is an example of an exposure hierarchy. So when we're talking about exposure hierarchies, I'm not expecting young people to go from 0 to 100 straight away and do the thing that they are most afraid of straight away. That would be unkind and unhelpful and probably be setting them up for failure. So we break it down into what's called an exposure hierarchy. And I'm trying to nut out what would be really low level anxiety provoking stuff, 1, 2, 3, into the middle, and then into the most afraid thing that they could be doing. And I'm gathering momentum along the way. We're building confidence. I definitely tend to find they're really afraid to do some of the first stuff, but once they can start doing things despite their anxiety, their confidence really builds and they can get up to the harder stuff. So this is an example for a 7-year-old with separation anxiety. So that is a fear that something will happen to me if my parents aren't around, or something will happen to my parents if I'm not around, and I'm going to avoid being away from my parents as a result. That's how we diagnose separation anxiety. So for this example, this young person was afraid of leaving their mother specifically, even for a small amount of time. And at the very start of treatment, this young person can't sleep alone. They have to sleep in their parents' bed every night. So for this young person, I hope you can see close enough. We've started at a 1. For this young person, a 1 out of 10, and I'm usually describing, okay, 0 is like asleep, and 10 is the most anxious that you've ever felt. This is the top goal that we're going for. For this young person, one was staying inside and playing while mum's putting things out on the washing line. And depending on what we're doing, I might even get more specific, like being close to the window, being away from the window. That was a 1. So once they've ticked that off, we've got staying at home while mum visits the neighbour for 10 minutes. That's quite a jump. They've identified that as a 3. The third step we've got is sleeping on a mattress next to mum's bed. So rather than being in bed with mum and dad, I'm going to sleep on a mattress right next door. That's for 3 out of 10. Next one there, they're going to stay at home with dad, still a supportive caregiver, but not quite the secure attachment figure they have with mum, while mum goes shopping for just half an hour. And that was a 4. So you can see how we're slowly getting them to separate from mum, with the end there being sleep in my own bedroom. That was a 10 out of 10. But before that, I think we've got one there with we're slowly moving the mattress to almost out of the room, and we're taking a nap during the day in separate beds. So I guess you can see that we're taking away the avoidance pattern, but we're slowly building up to the end goal. So that's something that I'm doing with every young person that I'm treating with anxiety. And if you have a treatment provider out in the community, it's very likely that they are implementing exposure in therapy. All right. So hopefully that's a bit of an overview of anxiety treatment. What can parents do? So much. I cannot undersell the huge impact that parents have on supporting anxiety treatment and making the most difference in young people being able to face up to what they're afraid of. You are with them 24/7. You have the attachment and the bond that we don't have. So you are our most valuable resource, and you are sitting with them in those crucial moments. All right. So to talk about parenting support techniques, I can't go anywhere without talking about attachment. And attachment very broadly is the structures that all of us have that we've learned from as soon as we were born that helps us understand relationships and how we relate to people. The attachment style that we're going for, I think there is 4, but the one that we would hope for all of us is a secure attachment. That's a secure attachment to our caregivers that provides a base for when we grow up and have adult relationships, we can have secure relationships with people. So when a young person is developing a secure relationship, you can see the 2 hands there. That kind of symbolizes the parents. You are the secure base, the safety. When a young person's developing a secure attachment, they have the independence and the bravery to go out and explore, to learn more about the world. And when that gets scary or something happens, they know that they can come back to you as a safe person and be contained, be kept safe. Particularly emotional containment is a big part of this. So you are always bigger than me, you are stronger, you're wiser and kinder, I can trust you. Whenever possible, you follow my needs, you let me be independent and explore, but when necessary, you take charge and you take care of me. So there's 2 sides to this. I guess attachments that are less helpful to us develop both when people are too overprotective. We don't let children go out and explore. That can make them quite anxious. But also the reverse of that. If we give them too much freedom, let them go out and explore, but they know that they don't have safety and security back here with us, a whole nother different kind of attachment style can develop. So really just overview, a secure base is formed when we have the bravery to go out and explore, but also the safety to come back to our parent. And I've kind of summarized that here. Securely attached children can be independent and brave, knowing they can seek support when they feel overwhelmed, and they can be contained by their parent. Now we've got secure attachment down, I want to talk really quickly about mirror neurons. And I'm not going to get too sciencey, but remember when your child was a baby, or maybe you have a baby now, and you smile at them and they smile back. You know, you do a funny face or blow bubbles and you notice that their mouth comes together and they're trying to blow bubbles as well. This is our amazing brains at work. So when there's a connection between a child and a parent, our mirror neurons give us the ability to learn and develop human skills. It's everything from how we eat, how we speak, how we read emotional cues, how we understand the world around us. Picking up on our adults' cues tells us what's safe and what's not, how we should respond to people, how we should react in different situations. Studies have uncovered that infants can sense when a parent is depressed, angry, and we're always looking at our parents to see how we should interpret the world. We're also social beings, and our survival, like that video, depends on our ability to fit into a group. That is, our ability to understand other people's intentions, their emotions, their actions. Our mirror neurons help us develop that from being a baby. So mirror neurons are really important. And I speak to this because knowing that and role modeling the bravery that you want for your children is going to be essential in supporting them in an anxious moment. One of the most useful things you can do is role model calm and safety when children display anxiety, being the bigger person, the bigger, stronger adult. All right, so I've got two sides to strategies for supporting a child in an anxious moment. We've got how to support a child, and that's what this slide is about. And the next one is how to be a supportive parent, how to support yourself in an anxious moment. So I think a lot of these will be self-explanatory, I hope. So when a child is overwhelmed and anxious, their body is going into anxiety overdrive. Their heart is beating fast. They are sweaty. They are not able to focus on anything else. You might have spoken or you might have heard the term flipping your lid. That front part of your brain that thinks logically and reasons and is receptive to what parents are saying is gone. Your lid is flipped. You're just thinking about survival. You're just focused on what you're afraid of. So we need to encourage our children to put their lid back on and calm down, calm their sympathetic nervous system back down. And that really is just relaxation strategies. So breathing slowly and deeply together. I think it's often hard when someone's freaking out and they say, "Oh, just do some deep breathing." To do deep breathing by yourself while you're looking at someone that's not doing it can feel a bit awkward. So I think there's a lot of merit in breathing slowly and deeply together with your child. Now, I'm not going to overwhelm you with different techniques for breathing 10, 3, 2, 1. I think it gets too confusing. Just trying to slow your breathing down, breathe in deeply, breathe slowly is helpful. I say to some young people, breathe in on your thumb, breathe out. Breathe in on your finger, breathe out. That's in front of you with your hand. If you want to just say simply, let's count to 10 and start again, that's fine too. The second point there, sit with them and offer calm physical reassurance. I think for our young people, they want to be contained. You really do need to be with them. So often, putting them in another room to calm down can be really tough. If you can stay with them, if it's safe, that is incredibly helpful. So that could be just holding their hand so they know you're there. If they want a hug, having a hug. If they want to be held tightly, if they want to just sit next to you and feel, your legs next to theirs, if they don't want to be touched at all, but they want to be in the same room, just that they know that you're there and you're containing them. Using all five senses together, this is a favorite of mine, I think, because it gives you something to focus on outside of your body. So I call this grounding. Some people call it the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique. I tend to find a bit like the breathing when you're absolutely in a panic. You can't remember, oh, was it 5 things in the room or was it 4 breathing? I can't remember. There's no right or wrong to this technique. It's essentially using your senses. What can you see? What can you hear? What can you smell? What can you feel? What can you taste? I usually start with 5 things in the room that you've never noticed before. And I'm yet to have anyone that hasn't noticed a tiny dot on a wall before, or the specific color of a plant, or a dent in the wall that I haven't noticed before. Often they're kind of in that panic sense themselves, so I'll usually guide them with the first one, particularly with things like, okay, what can you feel? I don't know. Okay, well, I can feel that my sleeve of my t-shirt, my jumper is really bunched up on this part of my wrist. I can feel that. Okay, yeah, I can also feel my t-shirt. Oh yeah, I can feel my shoes. Oh yeah, I can feel my butt on the chair. We've also smell sometimes can need a little bit of guiding. So I might say to young people, can you smell my wrist? I've got perfume on. Can you smell that? Yeah, I can smell that. Okay, what can you smell? Can you smell your laundry liquid on your jumper? Anything that gets them into their senses, into their bodies, and away from panic, panic, panic in their brain. Reassure them that anxiety will pass and they will be okay. That one's incredibly important, and I'll probably ramble on about it in the next slide. But the premise that anxiety doesn't last forever is essential and true. I'm sure you can think about the last time you were incredibly anxious or really depressed or really worried about something and how awful that felt. And I'm hoping that it's not still here with you. But the same goes for happy feelings too. If you remember the last time you felt really, really happy, unfortunately, that didn't last forever. It was good while it was there, but emotions and body symptoms do not last, cannot last forever. Particularly if you're dealing with someone who's having a panic attack. Panic attacks do not last forever. We would be exhausted if they did. So, as awful and uncomfortable as it is in this moment, it will pass and they will be okay. Another strategy you can use is thinking of a safe place. And similar to grounding, when I'm talking about safe places with young people, I'm trying to get them to really take themselves there in their mind. What can you see in your safe place? What can you smell? What can you feel under your feet? Is it cold? Can you feel the wind on your skin? Is it hot? Are you safe in your bedroom? Can you feel your covers on you? Can you smell the smell of mum or dad at home? So that can be a helpful way to get them out of that anxious headspace. And the last one, encouraging them to do something that helps them to feel calmer. As long as we're not encouraging avoidance of the situation we're trying to get them into, if it's something like taking a walk or listening to music or playing a film, anything that can kind of help them calm down and get them ready is totally fine. So that's helping the child in the anxious moment. How to help extended. So I've got a number of slides here about what to say. I think we do a lot of talking and explaining when we're in these moments with kids. Just number one, do not try to eliminate the anxiety. I hope I've harped on enough with the vicious cycle of anxiety. If you're helping them to eliminate the anxiety or avoid the anxiety, you are not helping with long-term change. I will say no more about that, but it's extremely important. Number two, express positive but realistic expectations. I think often we can fall into a trap of saying, it's going to be fine, or, don't be anxious, or you won't be anxious in that moment. Don't worry, is unrealistic and unhelpful. I've also banged on a lot about the fact that, yes, they will be anxious in the moment, but it's nothing that they can't cope with, is a more helpful response than you won't be anxious or it won't come true. That can also invalidate what is probably a very reasonable and understandable fear for these kids because it's usually happened before. So, a few things that we can say when our kids feel anxious or scared. We don't know what will happen or when this will end, but it won't last forever. Asking them, what questions do you have? What are you worried about? Can we problem solve this together? I'll go more into that in the next slide. Just acknowledging the pain. This is really hard right now, but I also know that we can deal with this and we can get through this together. That's that containment, that safe base again. There's nothing that you and I can't handle together. I'm here and I've got your back. Even though we don't have all the answers right now, we know more. Or if I know more, I'll let you know. It's totally normal to feel worried, sad, or disappointed, or even angry. Let's see how we can take good, kind care of your feelings. That's a mouthful sentence. Just validating their feelings and let's see what we can do about it. We'll take it one step at a time and focus on what we do have control over, like doing things that help us stay safe, taking care of ourselves, and being gentle, forgiving, and kind with each other. I think it's also helpful to note here that if you make a mistake in the moment, if you're in the heat of a parenting moment and you say something that's not helpful, that's okay. You are only human. I've said unhelpful things to young people in the heat of the moment as well. Um, be kind to yourself, just do the best that you can, and you can always follow up later with a more helpful statement. Some more helpful coping statements. I'm here to support you no matter what. It's really hard right now, but we can do hard things. Can you help me understand this better? I'm listening, just helping them talk out their worries. I kind of like this one. This boundary is not negotiable, but I still want to hear why you disagree. I still value your opinion, but I'm holding firm on this one. There's a reason why I've made an adult decision about why we have to do this. I know you're upset. When you're ready to talk, I'm here. Everyone makes mistakes. Let's take a breather, then brainstorm what to do. I think the real common theme here is I am here. I am the bigger person. I'm the parent. I'm here for you. I'm not going anywhere. These are a few that I've written. I know you can cope no matter what happens. And I hope that that one kind of speaks to we don't know what the outcome is. We don't know whether you're going to succeed, but I know you can cope. The second one there is my favorite thing to say to anyone ever when it comes to anxiety. Anxiety is your body's way of telling you this is important. I'm proud of you for being brave. And that can even open up a conversation of why do you think this is important to you? Why do you think your body's telling you? Um, I think that can often be really useful in understanding the deeper meaning. So, for our kid with anxiety about attending class, well, it's because I really want to make friends in my class. I really want to do well at school. School is really important to me, and that's something to be celebrated. I'll be here for you no matter what happens today. I think can really take away that fear of failure for kids. This feeling is uncomfortable. It won't last forever. Anxiety is not the boss of you. You've been brave before. Give an example. I know you can be brave again. I think that really speaks to that when their lid is flipped, they're not remembering all those times when they did a good job. They're not remembering all of those examples of when they've been brave. You have to remind them, help them put the lid back on. Just do your best. All right. I said a few more strategies. So if you can avoid reinforcing their fears, often we can find that it's really easy to buy into some of their worries. So that could be verbal, like, oh yeah, school's really hard with all the kids in the class, isn't it? Oh, it's really hard for us to leave the house, isn't it? Or even showing in your body that you are afraid for them. And this can be really hard, particularly if you've seen them fail before. So, for example, if you want to get them to a soccer practice and they're really, really anxious about doing that, they've been bullied at another soccer team before, you might have really valid fears and worries about that happening again. But it's really important if you can to try and really reinforce coping and try and mask some of those fears because we essentially want them to face up to fear, be resilient, and have another go. So our students are hypervigilant to any evidence that a feared object could be as scary as they think. Number 4, reinforce attempts at bravery. I often say to parents, if you feel like you're praising your child too much, it's embarrassing. They're going to notice. They're going to think that you're making fun of them. They won't. Kids never get enough of their parents' praise. So even if they haven't been able to fully complete a task, any strategies that they've been able to implement, any small attempts at bravery, lather on the praise, and they'll be more likely to do it again. This one's really important. Keep the anticipatory period short. That essentially means that time before the anxious event happens and the child's aware that it's going to happen, the longer it is, the more they're going to overthink it, the more they're going to look for reasons why it will go badly, the more they're going to try and avoid it. And this is usually the time where you're going to start to see resistant behaviors, that anxiety coming up, making them defiant, making them mad, making them upset, the begging, the bargaining. If you can keep that period as short as possible, you're going to have more likelihood of success. Now, I know that is difficult depending on the child, and if you go one way, two way, the other, it can go really badly. Obviously, springing things on children can make them really anxious and not want to do it. Often, our children who really struggle with routine changes, like children with autism, can find it difficult if you don't give them enough time to plan and let them know what the routine is. But don't give them excessive amounts of time to overthink and worry. And I think all of us can relate to that, right? I was thinking about this the other day when I went to the doctor's to have a small procedure, and it was kind of sprung on me in the appointment. Oh, we're going to do this. And it wasn't nice at all. But I think if I had had the whole week to overthink that and worry, and I'd had that appointment in my diary, I would have worried about it so much more than when it was sprung on me on the day. I just had to face up and do it, and then it was done. Number 6, problem solve together. So this can be a really useful strategy in that anticipatory period. You're going to hear a lot of verbal checking. What if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? Totally okay to have a healthy amount of talking that out and problem solving. And some useful questions you can ask is, okay, well, what would happen if the fear came true? What would happen if it didn't? What's the worst thing that could happen? What strategies do you have to employ if the worst case scenario did happen? What's the most likely thing that can happen? What would it be like if the best outcome came true? All useful questions you can talk about in that anticipatory period. I have definitely spoken about this, that reinforced anxiety will pass. Very important. Number 8, this one is not to be underestimated. So role modeling healthy ways of handling anxiety ourselves as adults. So that's saying do as I say, not as I do is not true. We talked about mirror neurons. We know that our kids are always looking to us as role models for how they should experience the world. So experiencing anxiety yourself, making a mistake yourself can be a really good opportunity for you to verbalize your fears and role model healthy coping strategies. So if there was ever an excuse for you to maybe face up to your own anxiety or to role model getting treatment for your own anxiety or doing things that you're afraid of, it would be now. And don't be afraid to speak about that in a child-friendly way in front of your child. This really role models that anxiety is normal. We all experience it, and it's how we handle it that matters. Okay, I hope that was useful. I've got a few resources for children and for you that might be helpful on the internet. So if you don't know about the Brave program already, it is amazing. An online CBT program through the University of Queensland. They've got 3 separate programs for very young children, children and teenagers, and there's accompanying parenting program modules too. And I know for a fact in the Brave program, they have an anxiety hierarchy component. So it's definitely a fantastic free program. Links down the bottom. MindSpot is another really cool suite of online courses for young people 18 to 25, so a little bit older, about helping to manage symptoms of anxiety and depression. And there's some therapist support in there as well. I'm always promoting eHeadspace, which is just an amazing resource for so many different things. They've got forums that are moderated by Headspace workers where young people can talk about what they're experiencing. There's online chat, there's phone support, all kinds of resources on there. If a young person is experiencing OCD, that is a form of anxiety, but it is a little bit harder to treat. So engaging with a professional in the community would be my advice. But if that's not accessible to you at the moment, there is this amazing 8-stage program through Curtin that takes you through an anxiety specific exposure hierarchy for OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. This Way Up, another CBT, cognitive behavior therapy course for teenagers. And also got Kids Helpline that, although it's called Kids Helpline, helps anyone from 5 to 25 years. They've also got the online chat, the phone. I know a lot of our young people access that resource when they're not feeling comfortable to speak with a health professional or with their parents, and they're available 24/7, I think. Okay, resources for parents, because it is not to be underestimated how tough your job is. Dealing with a young person's anxiety is exhausting, and very likely you've got a whole bunch of other things going on in the home. This might not be your only young person with mental health conditions. So you're doing an amazing job, and it's completely understandable to need some support for yourself and essential, I would say. some support for yourself in supporting your young person. So there is eCouch, which has 5 online programs at the moment. And each program has a number of different modules, activities, workbooks, and it's all evidence-based, which is really cool. I've put on there Mum Space, which is a support site for not only new parents, but also parents of older children as well. And there's also a really cool resource through Reach Out, which is a charity that is parent coaching. So helping you build a really strong relationship with your teenager through phone and online coaching. And I believe that is all free. There's some really cool initiatives at the moment with COVID. So having a mental health care plan can open up all kinds of services to you that are often bulk billing if you're happy with telehealth. And I would imagine having a kid at open access, you're probably fairly tech savvy. So very briefly, a mental health care plan, if you haven't already got one for your child, is where you go to the GP, you speak about your mental health and they give you access to Medicare rebated sessions with a health professional, either a psychologist or an accredited mental health social worker. And that can be a private clinic in the community, but there's also a few bulk billing forums online, and here's 3 of those. So once you've got your mental health care plan, you can ask your doctor to email you a copy of that. You can upload it on these different forums. And the great thing about these at the moment is they seem to have a lot shorter waiting times than private at the moment, which is really exciting. I think I know at least for Harvest Clinic, you can get in within 7 days. And for Someone Health is pretty cool because that is available on the weekends as well if you're a working parent. So those are, telehealth sessions with a psychologist that will be free with a mental health care plan. Right. Thank you so much for listening in. I hope this has been helpful. I hope I'll get an opportunity to present this in person at some point. So it would be lovely to meet you all and answer your questions in person. But until then, I hope this has been helpful. These are some of the resources that I've got this information from today. And good luck. You're doing an absolutely amazing job. We rely so heavily on the amazing work of our parents here at Open Access. So thank you for your hard work, and I hope this has been useful.